Hi, Andy. In this episode, you're talking with our chief scientist, Ranjitha Kumar. In preparing for the interview, I came across her Google Scholar profile. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, Ranjitha is certainly pretty impressive. I don't know how many tech companies have their own chief scientists like we do here at UserTesting. I really enjoyed the conversation with Ranjitha. She's really going to share with listeners UserTesting's views on the adoption of AI and machine learning in experience research.
Yes, so much is happening today around AI, and it seems to be going so fast.
Well, enough of the intro. Let's get to the show. But before we go, Nathan, I got to ask, what do you call a wise owl with incredible insights?
I don't know. What?
An insightful hoot.
Like people who know us will get that.
All right, let's keep going. Keep going.
Welcome to Insights Unlocked, an original podcast from UserTesting, where we bring you candid conversations and stories with the thinkers, doers, and builders behind some of the most successful digital products and experiences in the world, from concept to execution.
Welcome to the Insights Unlocked.
Oh, see, sorry, I talked right over you. Look at that. I was like, Ranjitha's like, look at these amateurs. They can't even get through a sentence. Sorry. Go ahead, Nathan.
That might be the actual opening of the show. We'll keep that. Welcome to the Insights Unlocked podcast. I'm Nathan Isaacs, and joining us today as guest host is Andy MacMillan, UserTesting's CEO. Welcome, Andy.
Hey, everyone. Excited about today's show. Our guest today is Ranjitha Kumar. Ranjitha is UserTesting's chief scientist, which we will discuss in a bit. She's also an associate professor of computer science at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. She has her BS and PhD from Stanford, and as part of her PhD work, she co-founded an Andreessen Horowitz-backed startup. So it is going to be great to have you here. Welcome to the show, Ranjitha.
Thanks for having me.
To tee up our conversation today about the use of AI in experience research, we asked UX researchers in the UserTesting Contributor Network their thoughts on the topic. Here's what they said.
So I've already started using it a little bit to prioritize my work, to strategize, but how I think AI will change UX research is I'm hopeful that it will help analyze qualitative data at scale. So, we can conduct thousands of interviews and then be able to at least start with an analysis that we can then dig deeper into. What's the biggest opportunity or risks for AI and UX? I'm really concerned that people will start to use AI as a proxy for user experience research. I'm a user experience researcher, and I truly believe that there's no real substitute for talking to humans and for watching humans. And that can be different than what, an algorithm might produce.
I would be more hesitant to have it replace some of the higher level tasks. I won't ask it to draft the whole research plan for me, or I won't ask it to do my data analysis for me. But I think it might have the potential. I would need to be the one to make the final decision to look at the results from the AI. I would never just take the results direct output and make that my deliverable.
Having a way to summarize all of that information into a report would be great, save a lot of time, because the interviewing is the easy part, I personally find. But it's the write-up afterwards is what takes the longest. So it would definitely make things easier to focus on other tasks. In terms of risks, I don't believe it's going to cause an issue for anyone to be at risk with AI in terms of their job being lost. I think, if anything, it's going to make more jobs, because with AI, it's such a broad field, as you can use it for so many things, and it's ultimately that information that needs to be processed is where that's the best way for it.
Ranjitha, I'd like to know, what were your thoughts after watching the video? Anything sort of stick out? And maybe before you answer, can you share with the listeners what you're responsible for as UserTesting's chief scientist?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the most important part of my job is to understand customer problems and needs, and also understand the cutting edge technologies that are out there, and then figure out how to map between the tech and customer problems to come up with new and better ways to solve those problems. Watching the video, I was very excited about the future because I feel like our customers get the role that AI can play in terms of making their job easier and better. I think one of the researchers she actually said something like analyze qualitative data at scale. I think that really shows that, she understands that the way that AI can come to bear on her workflows is in a way that gives her superpowers. She doesn't have to manually watch every video. She can, in fact, have tests with thousands of videos and have the AI identify for her the most important bits, and only have to watch those videos and come up with actionable insights. So I was just very excited to see that people saw AI not as a tool that was going to replace them, but something that would amplify their own abilities and help us move into a future where, experience research is elevated at their organizations.
Yeah, I had some of the same impressions. I thought it was interesting how folks are sort of on this sliding scale of what they think it could help them do. I almost wish we had done a similar test, 4, 5, 6 months ago. And I think one of the things that's really happened with these large language models and ChatGPT and things is there's sort of a belief now that this could be helpful. And even a few folks said something like, I wouldn't let it do A, B, and C. Well, maybe C, but not B yet. But there's always going to be a need for me to play a role in how I would use that. And I think that was really interesting. It was sort of this like sliding scale of what was possible, but it almost seemed like people's imaginations could stretch just as far to imagine how they would use whatever that new capability would be to be better at their job. And so I agree. It seemed to have, on one hand, less of a fear around it, but also almost like an expanding permission set for what AI could do. And so I thought that was really interesting. And maybe to segue to a question, I mean, there is a lot of buzz around generative AI. What opportunities do you think generative AI creates, and maybe what do you think it's good at and what's it not good at?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very interesting question, and I'll be honest, I think we're still trying to understand what generative AI is good at and what are its limitations. Certainly, I think there are interesting ways in which we can apply this technology to our domain and use cases.
Yeah, I think I would love to hear where you think generative AI can kind of go. And then maybe as part of that, I think, our audience is specifically trying to think about how AI, can sort of both disrupt and improve the UX research industry. And so maybe like thinking through not only large language models, but maybe we could even broaden slightly to kind of in the experience research space, what role and opportunities do you see AI creating?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of cool because I do think AI can assist at basically every stage of the experience research lifecycle. So, just to rattle off some examples, right? Figuring out an AI assistant could help you figure out what to test, when to test. It can help you connect with the right audience. It can suggest templates for you. It can also, you can even describe what your research question might be, and it can actually generate a research plan for you or a test plan. And that's where I think it's really interesting because in the sense that that generative capability we were talking about, because it is very good at generating, natural language English sentences right now. And so being able to go from having vague ideas about what you're trying to understand and test, and being able to see that reified in a test plan, I think it's very powerful as an interaction. But I think we'll have to kind of feel it out.
Yeah, I think that's right. One of the things that you and I have talked about, Ranjitha, is this idea that in sort of each section of the research, as you highlight, right, whether it's what should I test, how do I test it, how do I understand what comes back to get that research, there's ways it can help. I think it would be interesting for you to share a little bit with our audience that, it's funny, I think in some ways AI in a lot of people's minds is sort of expanded to be the large language models, but the reality is large language models are just sort of one aspect of really interesting things that AI can do. And one of the things that we've talked a lot about internally is asking an AI model, for example, to help you write a research report is really only as good as the facts that you can gather in the research, right? Ultimately, facts matter in research, or observations or things that you collect. And one of the things, you didn't join UserTesting, a few weeks ago when ChatGPT came out and AI was cool. Like you've been working on this for quite a little while here. And we've been doing a bunch of work in sort of other fields as well around AI, like machine learning. Could you tell everybody a little bit about the idea of extracting insights? One of the people spoke about, I have all this volume of qualitative research. Can you talk about sort of what machine learning models are already doing to help people extract insights from some of the research that they're conducting on the platform?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Andy. I think it's important to acknowledge that we've been doing, machine learning, and we have several machine learning models in production right now on the UserTesting platform. So yeah, I can't believe it's been almost 4 years since I've joined UserTesting, and we've worked on very exciting, cutting edge models, like training cutting edge models. We certainly can analyze people's sentiment from the transcript data we collect. We can analyze where people are experiencing friction through analyzing their behavioral data. We can even understand what the intent is behind the behavior that we can observe, that we record. So we can say in this part of the video, someone was trying to do a login interaction, or here they were trying to find a product and check out, right? So I think it's very powerful that we can take all these different streams of data that we collect at UserTesting and be able to actually, extract these insights across all of these streams. We're almost, I would say, triangulating across all of these streams to even get more powerful signals. And so I actually think we're so well prepared for this new large language model world because, as you say, most of the power is actually in the data itself. So if you don't have high quality data, you're not going to, get high quality insights from that data. The machine learning models, right? This is where you actually run into hallucination as they get more powerful and they don't have the data to back it. You're going to actually end up with perhaps insights that weren't actually based on factual data. So I think that's why I'm so excited about UserTesting's future, is because we've been kind of preparing for this new world all along.
Yeah, the idea that you could sort of connect something that comes up, say, in a research report that a maybe large language model helped you write, but as a consumer of that, the idea that you could connect it back to a fact or an observation pattern, which is something we've been working on internally, I think is really interesting to be able to say, I read this in the report, I was surprised by that or excited by that, and to be able to sort of, click and drill down and then see real customers, real people sort of, giving that feedback, showing that pattern, hitting that point of friction, whatever that might be, I think is incredibly powerful. It is really going to change the way in which people can think about getting this kind of feedback. And I think it really speaks to me about the idea that when we talk to UX researchers or designers who are looking to get more feedback, or even market researchers, one of the main things that we hear about, I get told all the time as the CEO of UserTesting is, I'm sort of in this, trying to show everybody in the organization what I can do, but at the same time being a little bit cautious, because if all of a sudden everybody in the organization wanted to do this, there's just sort of no way to meet demand, right? There's no way to test every design, every concept, every idea and get customer feedback. And one of the opportunities, I think, as we look at applying AI to experience research is, imagine being able to have so many more things go through a validation step, right? To be able to say, hey, I can really expand when I test, what I test, and how I get that feedback. I can expand how I collect the results of that feedback. I can put quantitative measures against it, all these things I could do. And then what happens as a researcher is now I've got all these signals out there that I'm learning from, and I can learn, oh, these areas of my, whatever it is, my product, my website, my experience aren't very good. Now I can spend time researching what could be a better experience, which I think most people would rather be doing, frankly, that are experienced researchers. They'd rather be working on like a big, meaty problem of like, hey, how do I fix this thing that doesn't resonate with my customer? And so I think our more forward-looking researchers are really thinking about, if I could almost have this like experienced research co-pilot that's helping me do sort of the validation research at scale, I could really be doing more generative things that are probably a lot more interesting, and probably using AI to help me do that as well. So, I think that's maybe the optimist point of view. What do you think the risks are? Maybe beyond hallucinations, I don't know, maybe that's the biggest risk, but what do you think the risks are for folks to be aware of when they think about leveraging sort of AI and machine learning?
The best conference to help brands launch the most compelling digital experiences returns. We hope to see you at our annual customer conference, the Human Insights Summit, when it takes over Seattle this August. Get a chance to learn from and network with the best minds in research, design, product, and marketing across the globe. More than 400 attendees will take over Seattle to learn, connect, and have fun. Join us for 3 days that will change how you use human insight to create exceptional customer experiences. Don't miss this 2023, live in person and streaming globally. Register at usertesting.com/this.
What do you think the risks are for folks to be aware of when they think about leveraging sort of AI and machine learning?
Yeah, I mean, I think the risks are, you actually kind of hit on some of the risks, I think, in what you just said. I think the probabilistic nature and the non-deterministic nature of machine learning is there's going to always be latent risk there, right? Because you're expecting models to generalize from data they've seen. So there's always the risk of it seeing data, it's always going to see new data it hasn't seen before and predict based on data it has previously seen. So it could get things wrong, right? And so I think there are ways to mitigate for those risks within the experience. And that's something we've also been investing in for the last, 3 or 4 years, because, there will be some, no matter how accurate your model is, there will be situations where it does get the prediction wrong. So you need to be able to first give your users a easy way to actually validate whether or not the prediction was correct. And I think you referenced this when you said, well, if an AI generates an insight for you, you should be able to actually see the raw data and verify that that insight was correct. So this way of drilling into raw data and being able to validate predictions, I think, is very important. And in the, all future experiences that we will release that leverage machine learning models will always have a fast way for you to verify the predictions, because otherwise you're not actually saving people any time, right? If they have to watch all of the videos again just to be sure if the takeaway or the insight was correct. And so always we want to make sure it's easy to find out whether we were right or wrong. The other risk is I would call it the risk of missing out on things that are important, right? If you use an AI to tell you what's important, you might be ignoring stuff that happened that was probably important, but the AI just missed it. And so there's this tension always between this, what they call precision and recall with AI models. And so the question is, we have to work with our customers to understand how sensitive they are to the potential of missing out. The summarizations might not summarize something that was there in the data that a researcher would find important. And so that's another potential risk that's there. The other, I think, risk besides, we talked about hallucinations, but I think there's also, it's important to acknowledge that when you're dealing with large language models, there's going to be bias in the model, and because if it's being trained on all the information out there on the web, there are inherent biases in the data. And so we have to kind of be on the lookout for how those biases manifest themselves in our product. I think one thing that's really interesting actually about training models on the user testing data actually is that we have all of this demographic information from the participants who are generating the data. And I actually think that's very important because we can actually be sensitive to that and train models where we sample better. So we can actually say, this is a model of behavior in North America, with people over the age of 35. Like, we can really actually say what that data the data set is and who generated that data that we're training the models over. And I think as we head into the future, that actually gives me great comfort that we can, in the market, have that type of advantage over others who are kind of blindly training over all of this data on the web.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. I agree with you. I think the idea that the research data that our customers and folks that do kind of UX research create is really interesting when you think about it. It's purpose built. It has a test plan behind it, right? So all the machine learning models we're training, we know what people were supposed to be trying to do. We have their screen capture, and they're all narrated by the person who was doing the activity. So it's it's funny when people train their data or get their data ready for AI. Some people will send their silent videos out to be narrated by some other person, right? Like, we have a person doing it, narrating what they were doing. We have click path data and all this stuff. So it's a really interesting, well annotated data set. We have all the tags and stuff that researchers are placing against this tag. And so, I think our if you're a UX researcher or a designer, somebody who's interested in this, and you're listening to the podcast, I think one of the things you should think about is like the data set you're generating is really interesting. And so, we as a platform think about that as well and try to make sure we're taking advantage of that. I think you bring up a good point about internet training data. I don't know about you, but I don't believe everything that I read online. So I don't know that I want the models that I'm using only trained online. So I think that's a really good thought. And I want to go to your first point. I think one of the things I've always thought about since I joined user testing was sort of this, believing two opposing things at the same time, which is, one, can you help me get to insights faster? That's something customers have always asked me, right? I have so much to do, watching all this content. Can you give me the insights faster? And so we say yes, but also at the same time, I hold this opposing concept, which is it's probably worthwhile to sometimes watch the videos because you're building intuition, you're building an understanding and empathy and understanding of your user. And so again, I think I go back to this idea that, while it's great to have this sort of AI co-pilot that can help me do all kinds of things, I still think there's a need as designers, as product managers, as researchers to know your customer, to sort of be able to build that intuition. The best ideas, come not from looking backwards often, but from imagining people's future needs and what's going to be going forward. And so I think this idea that, AI can help us in a lot of ways, get more signal and get more answers. But in some ways, it's probably a tool also to point us to where do I just need to sort of, sit down, get a cup of coffee and watch some of my users use the product still. I think we're never going to get away from that if we're going to build great products. And so I think that's one of the ways that at least I think about the future of the role, really being this sort of, again, kind of AI assisted superpower where you could probably do more, but ultimately, I still think there's a person at the end of this, both a person going through the experience, sharing what it's like to be a user, and a person who's sort of consuming that feedback and trying to understand and know customers.
I 100% agree with what you just said. A lot of people promise actionable insights from AI, and I think that's just really hard to know what you should do, right? That's still... I still think that requires a human, as you said, to watch and really understand what's happening at a deeper layer and understand how to improve the experience. So While I think that AI and ML powered technology can help you generate insights that tell you here's what happened and here were some interesting correlations that existed across these tests or across these different data streams, you can't then turn around and say, well, it would be really hard for the AI to say, and then based on all of this, these correlations that it observed, here's what you should go and change in the product, right? I think that layer of then here's the action you should take, that's really still very hard for an AI to get right. And you probably don't even want to trust AI to do that for you, honestly. And so, no, I think we're really talking about making the mundane aspects of the job, like automating the mundane aspects of the job so that, UX researchers can do what they do best, more efficiently and better. So, I definitely believe in a future with, human in the loop. We're not trying to automate everything so that you can just hit go and just everything gets automatically optimized forever, perpetually. We're not headed into that future. I think there has to be a human at every stage in the experience research life cycle, but we can make their lives a lot easier.
Yeah, and I think that's right, and their impact even broader, right? So if you think of you mentioned sort of the mundane. The reality is there's no shortage of mundane that could be being done right now, right? Again, I go back to like how many designs go through a full UX research vetting and validation before they're shipped? How much stuff do we ship? We just didn't do that. And you think back to, I draw the analogy kind of to QA. I mean, nobody ships code anymore that didn't QA, but a lot of that was we learned how to automate some of the mundane aspects of QA. We still have a QA team. People have QA teams. But the code coverage is much higher. I think that's sort of the opportunity here is we could really change the coverage model. So look, I suspect we could probably go on for quite a little while. It's an amazing topic. I think we will have to revisit this segment, I think, a few times because, again, this space is really evolving quickly. So I think it was really interesting, again, to hear not only where you see this going, but this is not a new thing for us. We've been working on machine learning and bringing AI into the platform for a couple of years now. So it was nice to sort of connect the dots on why those things were important and those things are where they're going forward.
Ranjitha, thank you for being on the show today. Before we go, I wanted to share with our listeners that you are hosting a YouTube series on the human-AI collaboration. And in the series, you and your guests will take on many of these topics that we discussed here today. And a link to that will also be in the show notes.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to subscribe to those. That sounds amazing. So Ranjitha, again, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Nathan.
Want to keep the conversation going? You can find the show notes at usertesting.com/podcast. If you haven't already, don't forget to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, or Google Play so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, please share it with a friend or leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. And until next time, this is Insights Unlocked, an original podcast from UserTesting.